Right, here goes. Programs. Programming plays a deep role in our lives that many people want to admit to themselves or on a wider basis. The perception is in life that bad things always happen to somebody else, and your fears in and of life plays heavily into those events happening and often repeating. Living in a bubble world is no different to being in the sleeping pods whilst the planet was being reset. You cannot live life in a slumber. And more importantly, you cannot go through life ignoring the plight of others. It is humanity's biggest crime, whereby a problem or situation that is not on your doorstep is not your problem or concern. And yet many speak of consciousness without an awareness of what it really entails. Consciousness affects us all simultaneously. So if the people of, say, Iraq are in turmoil, struggle and strife, their collective consciousness circles around the globe and affects you. That's how it works. It is no different to how nature works. It is symbiotic. And as we have said frequently on this show, once you see the pattern, it always repeats. As an example, the People's Club manifesto of the cooperative business, which has proven to work if people work with it, not at it. But it also applies as a social model, a psychological model, and can ultimately lead to a political model. It can apply to the banking model, it can apply to the global military model, and it can also apply in working with on and off planet beings who are not terrestrial. Why does it work in so many fields? Because the consciousness behind it is supported by nature and also source. Caring and sharing, working together in harmony. Just those two aspects raises the levels of consciousness higher again. And almost overnight we have a better world. But the programming kicks in. The idea it only happens to somebody else, like MK Ultra. The perception is that it happened just to super soldiers or other military or agency-based personnel only. Not realising what you're saying or stating. No, it happened to ordinary people. What you're saying is it is in part okay that they went through that because they are military or super soldiers and that was part of their training, albeit brutal. You are applying it to the boxes. And because you're not in that box, equals it doesn't apply to you. Wrong thinking and a common mistake. But it's also a denial tactic, a protection shield if you like, and it is your way of not facing it, to rationalise it in such a way that you don't have to take responsibility for it. MK Ultra is and happens for us all. Propaganda, or pro-pagan da, the real term, is MK Ultra. You do realise that now, don't you? If you didn't, you know now. How is the media MK Ultra, you may ask? Because they're not telling you the truth, and subsequently creating a negative frequency vibration for all of us to absorb is what? It permeates everywhere and seeps into your thinking and reaction patterns and wreaks havoc within our surroundings. And in essence, it affects the consciousness. Television affects the consciousness and subsequently is also an MK Ultra program. Look at the drivel that is on it. You've got news spouting bullshittery, riddled with lies, agendas and inharmonic frequencies, largely like the Weather Channel, which is run by IBM, or IWASM, to put people in fear and corral them into their way of thinking, which is, to all intents and purposes, is actually retarded. That is a harsh word, some will say. Take your blinkers off and look at what passes as entertainment. The TV was not created for your entertainment. Take an E and a T, ET, out of entertainment, which is symbolic in so many ways, and what you're left with is what it was designed for. Not entertainment, but entrainment. The fact that those two letters taken out is a pointer. Now, I could spend all night about a plethora of shows, and we did cover some of them in the last show, but a few examples I caught recently. A couple of guys doing a pain show where they get bitten by snakes and spiders and all other things poisonous for entertainment, and yet people watch that crap. It's entrainment. Jerry Springer, a show of what the Vedas would have called a group of derelicts cussing, spitting and fighting each other over some other derelict boy or girlfriend. Look at me, I'm famous, I'm on TV, and watch me drag some girl's hair out. Personally, I look at it with contempt and quickly switch the channel if I catch a glimpse of it. But that adulation and fame will be attained at any length, it seems, with the masses, regardless of how they look or act, and people watch it because in some way they feel they are superior to those on the TV, because they wouldn't act that way. But you are missing the point. By watching it, in essence, you become them. They dragged you down to their level as you are a participant, and you allowed that show to proliferate. Because you participated, you became a statistic. Statistics create ratings, and if sufficient follow it, the program keeps running because you complied. So it's us that creates those banal programs, not them. And when you realise they run these programs to literally take the piss out of us, and how easily humanity complies with it, then their hilarity goes up a notch at our expense. So we circle back to what was said earlier. Consciousness affects us all simultaneously. Participant or not, it still affects the all. Recognising that and applying it in your everyday life is a key to understanding thee and our future. Actions or inactions both have an effect and are part of the cosmic battle on many levels, including the battle between light and dark. You have to recognise the interconnectedness of it all to get to the root of the problem. Once you realise the problem, only then can the solutions be manifested and applied. Now, some may ponder or ask the question, so what you're saying is if I watch the Jerry Springer show, I'm part of the problem. It's only a show. I classic line of denial, it's only. Let's look at an example of it's only, shall we? Like Benghazi. Hillary basically stated it's only 4 people who died. What does it matter? But since then, thousands of others have died in various circumstances, largely to stifle what really went on in Benghazi. Whilst it may have only been 4 people, the consequences of that incident affected millions, and still does to this day. So you see how the it's only doesn't work when facing reality. The cause and effect of one incident on our planet on any given day, time or location has the subsequent effect to then affect the all. People watched the Springer show and it had a bad negative effect because it created a plethora of other banal public-based shows like Big Brother. Big Brother is about people watching people who are in the TV whilst those in the TV watch the TV themselves. Oh dear. Does that make any sense? And yet millions watched it. The whole point of that show for the viewer is to wait for 2 participants to fight or have sex, is it not? That is voyeurism. Voyeurism is the Big Brother show. Then Big Brother, not the show, turns the tables and becomes let's voyeuristically spy on us all. Can you see the pattern now? In the first show we mentioned the moon and its connectedness to the occult, religion and practices of the dark, and the big revelation of how the female aspect fell and was bound to the moon, including their menstrual cycle. It caused quite a trigger, which was expected. But the trigger was not because you rejected it, but because it hit an inner nerve or chord. Chord being the operative word. It hit the chord. Which is an unaddressed wound that runs very deep into the core of the female species. The mother wound, as it is called. In psychological terms, the mother wound more often affects the male. An abusive mother then creates a loop that then is often repeated on the male side in future relationships. How often does an abused male done by the mother lead to the male finding a female partner that is not only looks like the mother, but also acts like her as well? This is known as Stockholm Syndrome, whereby the person falls in love with the abuser, hostage, or sexual crimes, and even stalkers. Like Agneta Faltskog of ABBA fame. She was tormented by a stalker for years. She ended up marrying him. Ironically, in Stockholm. But it didn't last long, as that marriage was not based in love, but fear. And this is symbolic of unaddressed inner core wounding, whereby the abuser is then protected, supported, and in some cases they fall in love with them. In overview, it's bizarre. Yet the frequent occurrence of it means it shouldn't be ignored and it has to be addressed. The term Stockholm Syndrome came in 1973, and the hostage situation in Stockholm when 4 hostages were taken during a bank robbery. The hostages defended their captors after being released and would not agree to testify in court against them. This brings in the 2 emotions we operate by on this planet, and every interaction is based on one or the other, fear or love. And the key to self-mastery, all inner work, your love life, your prosperity and your interactions is, which one do you feed? Most people on this planet live in the fear aspect. They are Smiths in the Matrix terms, happy to go into boxes to fit in with the masses based on fear of not fitting in. But who said you have to fit in? Nobody. You did that to yourself. You allowed them to program you into a box. And it's like the old saying, if I asked you to put your hand in the fire, would you? Most would answer no. So why do you allow them to tell you what to do or say, what to watch, decide what is normal, and run a control system on you? Where is your input into it? Without your input, you are allowing them to use and abuse you on all levels. That is what you are personally are telling them. You are giving them consent to do with you as they wish, because you had no input. But if I don't go along with that, Thomas, I will lose my partner, friends or family. All of which I fully understand, trust me, I've been through it, all of it. But then you are living life in fear, not love, aren't you? Doing that. If your opinion, lifestyle, ideals, goals are not supported by partners, friends or family, in reality, from an overview perspective, you have lost them already, have you not? If they're not in sync with you, you have already lost them. Who gave them the right to decide how you should live, think or act? You did, by complying to their wishes. You didn't retain your own sovereignty. Why do they have a right to control you? They don't. Do you control what they say or do? In most cases, no. Then why do you allow them to do it to you? It's fear mode again. In a world of statistical analysis, where more is better, more is right in their world. But if one person out of 1,000 tells the truth, and 999 believe the lie, who is right and who is wrong? All 1,000 are wrong if the one standing in the truth bows to the 999. That one person who stands in the truth must stand firm to their onslaught, for they, the masses, operate in fear-based emotions, and they have no right to tell you any different. You have to stand in your own sovereignty and not bow to their bully boy tactics, or you will end up with Stockholm Syndrome of protecting those who attack you for telling and being in the truth. Why is life always so one-sided? The mainstream media give their opinions based on scripts given to them, and people believe it because it's the authority, forgetting it is you who are your own authority, not some jackass Jobsworth with no idea of how life works. You give your opinion, but you get attacked. Who gave them the right to attack you? When they never attacked the so-called official and narrative or the authority. Because if they question the official narrative, that puts them in fear, not love. Who said the mainstream media is the truth? Nobody. You allowed it to be your truth due to laziness of not finding out for yourselves. You consented to them imbuing you with falsehoods and also negative frequencies. This then plays into the deeper fears and something that came up in the first show of the prospect of 85% of our planet are bots, synths, clones, inorganic or host-possessed entities. The fear of that is palpable, and it's also fully understandable. But let's look at it in overview. The majority of people never interact with over 99% of the people on this planet. Only within a relatively small circle. So why is this such a difficult and hard topic to face up to? Well, there's a few factors to this. Fear is the main overriding aspect of it, but also our tendency to focus on what we have lost and not what we have gained. And the question to be asked, is it not the case for many of you who will listen to this show? You have already lost 85% or more of the people within your own circle. So they have already gone from your life. And this is eerily like technology and plans of the cabal, is it not? Considered to be a future event when it's already in the past. 85% of people around you have already gone for many of you. You lost the 85% already. You are all still here, all still retained your sanity, and many of you are flourishing because you were cut adrift or you were pushed out. You flourished because those people were holding you back. You have found your inner freedom and have gained so much. So why is the focus on what you lost and not what you have gained? Well, death is the primary driver of that particular program. We have lost loved ones, people say. which is a funny term to use. We have lost something, suggesting it may one day be found again, which could be true, which could be also a coping mechanism in and of itself. But the focus is we have lost people. But how can you have lost them? They are retained within your own memory bank. And all it takes for them to reappear is for you to access a memory of them. And you will have a vast volume of memories to draw on that makes those lost reappear. Do you stop to remember not what you have lost by that person dying, but what you gained from interacting with them in your life? Too few do, and therein lies the problem. Focusing on what is lost is a victimhood program that is very difficult to shift once that becomes ensconced within your core essence. It plagues you for the rest of your life. It then encompasses how you be in life, how you interact with life, and subsequently, if left unaddressed, erodes or destroys your life. But let's circle back a bit of what was mentioned earlier and humanity's biggest crime. Ignoring the plight of others. Most people do it, or have done it, myself included. Although I'm trying to address that with these shows. So we ignored the plight of humanity as the standard process and the actions of people, and yet now suddenly someone says 85% may not be what you thought they were and could potentially disappear. Then suddenly people become concerned for the 85%, when most barely concern themselves with less than 100 people. Why the sudden flip-flop in reactions? We ignored their plights for all of our lives, most of us. And then someone says potentially they may disappear, and oh my God, the fear kicks in. The causes of that thinking is yet again based in fear. And the question that people are really pondering on is not the 85%, but the one themselves. What if I am one of the 85%? What will happen to me? Be honest. But if you've really tuned into yourself, you already have the answer. Not from me, from you. We spoke about the 12 plus 1 in the first show that renders astrology kind of mute and void in many aspects when one of the zodiacs is missing. And we've also spoken about the 12 plus 1 and the missing month as well. There used to be 13 months, not 12. It used to be 13 months of 20 days here at one point in time. 260 days for the year. So here is some additional background information that may give you pointers of who ran that 13, now 12 program. Did you know the Jewish calendar is lunar and solar? And it is year 5780 now. Did you know the Islamic calendar is also lunar and has 354 days, less 11 days, 1 again, compared to the Gregorian? It is 1441 now, proving Islam, Hebrew and Christian are all one and the same moon-based cult. Did you know that the Ethiopian calendar is still 13 months and it's year 2013 now? Ethiopia is significant, as listeners to From Russia with Love will attest to. Ethiopia was the home of the fourth and last Garden of Eden, and their Kali Ma people exiled out of India and various other countries along the way. Modern-day Ethiopia is run heavily to this day, not by Africans, but by the Jewish Hebrew peoples. And their current New Year's Day is not January the 1st. But before we reveal what that date is, their new year is marked by and has been associated traditionally with the return of the Queen of Sheba to Ethiopia. Why? Following her visit to King Solomon in Jerusalem circa 980 BC. And it is said that the Queen of Sheba was also the Queen of Egypt and Ethiopia, and so proven further the connections of Egypt and Solomon as revealed in the From Russia with Love series. Now, the Queen of Sheba is depicted as jet black in certain pictures, resembling the jet black peoples of the Kali Ma worshippers in India. But maybe this next line will give a pointer to her. Ashkenazi incantations commonly depict the Queen of Sheba as a seductive dancer. Until recent generations, she was popularly pictured as a snatcher of children and a demonic witch, which sounds eerily like the depictions of Lilith to me. The date of their New Year's Day, it's September the 11th. Of course, which is also a ritual sacrifice day, much to the Americans and other people's cost on that fateful day 19 years ago. A real Holocaust for many. Holocaust means sacrificial death by fire. As Egypt and their connections has just been mentioned, this ties in nicely with our next piece, which brings in time, the penis, the vagina, and the symbolic 1 and 0 in reference to the sexual organs. The much revered worship of Osiris. Iris is a reference to the single eye. In the scriptures, it is stated that Osiris had his penis cut off. Penis, though often used in slang terms, is said to have the single eye also. There is certainly a number of children's cartoons with characters that resemble a penis with just one eye, including the aptly named characters called the Minions. Coincidence? I think not. All obelisks around the world are the penis phallic symbology of Osiris. His partner was Isis, twin SS, and is the origin of the name of the country of Switzerland. Who runs Switzerland? The Rothschilds. Who holds the Ring of Solomon? The Rothschilds. Which country became the reference for timepieces? Switzerland. Osiris and Isis and their son known as Horus, which is an anagram of hours and more references to time, Horus's father was also known as Ra, so Osiris was Ra. The Eye of Providence, or more commonly known as the All-Seeing Eye, so the iris was the eye of Horus. But when you know the meaning of OS before iris, then it all becomes much clearer, as you will see. Oz means God. Osiris means the eye of their god, which is Ra. The elites do the hand sign of the circle over the single eye and the iris, symbolizing the penis and the vagina again. The circle over the eye is representing the fall of woman, the eye, which is the one, and symbolizing the penis piercing through the vagina. The eyes have it, they say. Is it eyes, or is it the letter eyes? Eye is the one, and penis shaped. The circle in front of the eye is the vagina. This is what they're doing with the symbology. And it's up to you to decide whether that fits or not. It's up to you to know that, or is it you? Do you know that, or is it you, the sheep, to know that? Do you hear? If you don't, are you here? The final thing on this section before the music break is the saying, the pen is mightier than the sword. But given their worship of penises and Osiris, perhaps they are really telling us the penis is mightier than the sword. We will have more on swords later, but the next part of this show is about time.